to two of the finest wide receivers in football. James Lofton right there, and the other deep threat, John Jefferson. They are the core of the Packers' attack, but they will be challenged by a strong Dallas secondary that has a habit of coming up with the big plays at the right time.
The man who directs the Packer offense is a battered veteran of the NFL wars. Lynn Dickey has finally come into his own as one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I'll be taking a look at Dickey and the Free Spirits who've been on the receiving end of his game-winning passes this season.
But in order to make contact with this free spirit, Dickey will need time to set up. And the Doomsday guys are the guys who make the strong cowboy pass rush are determined to be in his face all afternoon. I'll be looking at that trench warfare in today's game between the Dallas front four and the offensive line of Green Bay, and Phyllis has her Dallas blue on.
Just a coincidence, Jimmy. The Dallas Cowboys, of course, have a tradition of great quarterbacks dating back to the early years of their franchise, and Danny White is taking his place in that gallery of heroes. In fact, the big D in Dallas these days is not just the city, but the man, their own favorite Danny boy. Our coverage of the battle for the trip to Washington and next week's championship game begins here, and we've got it all on the NFL Today.
Today is sponsored by the 1983 Volkswagens. Nothing else is a Volkswagen. And by True Value Hardware Stores. True Value, more than just a name. It's our way of doing business. And now, Brent Musburger.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the NFL Today. You know, it is rare when two good friends square off for as much as at stake today. But that is the case with Bart Starr on the left, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, and of course his Dallas counterpart, Tom Landry. They are the closest of friends, and prior to the start of this game, they met at midfield just a short time ago. They had a long conversation, but they were not exchanging game plans. Meanwhile, if you live by the forward pass, you are destined to die by the forward pass, and that happened today to the San Diego Chargers. Danny Fouts has thrown 5 interceptions. Miami will win and take on the New York Jets next Sunday for the championship of the AFC. 34-13, that pass right there made it 21-0. And it is now over, and Don Shula has gone back to the championship. He will be taking on a New York Jet team that he has beaten twice already this year. And, of course, that is next weekend. Ooh, Jimmy.
Ooh.
What a game that's going to be. Sure, he did beat him twice this year, but the last one was a barn burner. If you remember, Walt beat him 6 times in a row before that. It's going to be a very physical game. Both teams are very physical. Miami will be a home team favorite and nothing more.
I have a question for both of you. With Washington having the home field advantage, do you think they'd fare better against the Packers or the Cowboys?
Who's first?
Go ahead, you.
Well, they'd fare better against Green Bay because they have a better defense and they match up better against Green Bay. They would beat Green Bay easy, where with Dallas, they psych a little bit and they don't seem to play as well against the Cowboys.
Now, what about that psychological effect?
See, I disagree with Jimmy on a couple of levels. I really don't think they'd beat Green Bay easily. I think Green Bay would have a lot for them. But I really think that the Dallas Cowboys would bring out the best in the Washington Redskins. It seems every time I hear Joe Theismann or any of the Redskins, they're saying, we want Dallas. We want Dallas, and they're dead serious. They've done everything this year except beat the Cowboys, right?
That's right.
Well, the man down in Dallas on the sidelines having all the good times on the road down there. How about that? Irv, what's the situation down there?
You know, Brent, the Green Bay Packers are not the same Green Bay Packers we know of old. You have an explosive passing attack, which everybody's aware of. But keep this in mind as well, too. It's about 59 degrees here right now at Texas Stadium, and a fairly warm day. But the Packers have a brand-new practice facility up in Green Bay, which allows them to work out indoors on an artificial surface. They were there all week this week, working at a temperature of 57 degrees. So they're right at home in this ballpark. Of course, they have to beat the Dallas Cowboys. In order to do that, you have to stop their running game, and you start by stopping Tony Dorsett. They hope to try to gang tackle him by having the first guy hit him low. Let's go up to Pat and John.
Irv, thank you very much. You know, you talk about all the great athletes in this game on both sides. It's hard to pinpoint one particular point. that we think would be the deciding point. What do you think, John?
You know, it'll probably happen. You know, you talk about the wide receivers are going to throw the ball. Tony Dorsett's going to run. And it'll probably be some backup defensive back, and he'll intercept a pass in the end zone or fall on a fumble, and that's probably be the hero. They'll carry him off the field.
Both offensive units, both quarterbacks certainly seem to have a pretty good idea of what they feel that they have to accomplish. We asked both quarterbacks, Len Dickey and Danny White, what they feel they have to do.
I'd say the major thing that we're going to have to do is get some kind of a running game. If we can keep them off balance with some kind of a running game, keep them in the run-pass threat, then I think we'll be very effective. If we can't do that, we may be in for a long day.
The thing that we can't do that we did last week is give the ball up with turnovers. We've got to control the ball, hold on to it, and when we get down there, we've got to score points and get the ball in the end zone. Last week, we ended up kicking field goals 3 times when we really probably should have gotten the ball in the end zone, and we need to do that this week.
Both of those two things sound like pretty good ideas.
Well, you know what they were both talking about? They're putting a lot of pressure on those offensive lines, especially the offensive line of the Green Bay Packers.
Should be a dandy. Now let's go back to Brent Westberger.
All right, Pat and John, thank you. And I should point out that earlier in a conversation with him, they reported that John Dutton, the defensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, is very questionable. He may be able to go, but not as a starter. The same holds for running back Ron Springs. Robert Newhouse will step into the Cowboys starting lineup. We'll continue with Jimmy the Greek on the NFL Today in just a moment. Texas Stadium, where the Dallas Cowboys have lost a couple of times this year to the Pittsburgh Steelers and to the Philadelphia Eagles. But, Jimmy, I tell you what, the Packers will have to turn in a great game to beat them there today.
No question about it. Any quarterback is only as good as his blockers, the men up front. Len Dickey knows how true that is. If the Packers are to win today, they will have to stop the great Palace pass rush. And that's a tall order, maybe just a little too tall. Forget about the glamour boy passers and runners. Today's playoff game is going to the team that excels in the hand-to-hand combat along the line of scrimmage. For the Green Bay Packers, survival is a matter of holding off doomsday. This is the doomsday defense. Their object is to seek out and destroy Len Dickey, the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. But if they give Dickey time to pass, you'll see an aerial circus in Texas Stadium like there's never been before. Dickey can detonate James Lofton, or he can pull the fuse on Johnny Jefferson. Now, these are the scenes Dallas cornerback Everson Walls sees in his worst nightmares.
I need to talk to Ed and Harvey and the guys and see just exactly what's on their minds, because we don't want Dickey to just stand back there and have a go at it.
But the Packers have other ideas.
4-3, set. Here, get out. Now move it. Stay on it, keep it up.
If we can keep them away from Lynn, we can light up that scoreboard.
I think if we can give Lynn some time, I think the secondary of Dallas is going to have a long afternoon.
Oh, there's the possibility of it being a long afternoon.
We're going to gear ourselves up, and I'm sure that when we hit the field Sunday, we're going to be after Len Dickey.
And when the Cowboys start corralling quarterbacks, few passers can escape the lasso. Randy White and Too Tall Jones are headed for the Pro Bowl, and it's no secret why. But are the Packers overwhelmed? Hey, they don't seem to be.
In no way are we in awe of the Dallas Cowboys. They have an excellent front four, and that is their strength of their defense.
They're a good, consistent unit. I don't think they're the best front four in the league, and I don't think they're the best pass rushing front four in the league.
He has his own thoughts. I got mine, and we'll just see Sunday.
That was a real love tap that Randy White gave you coming in there, Greg.
You know something? I want to tell you something about Randy White. He is so peeved at some of the publicity that he's had so far. He's going to play a Super Bowl.
Has he had that bad a season?
Well, it hasn't been as great as it was before. You know, he's been all-pro, all-pro, all-pro.
Then he shouldn't be mad at the critics. He should get mad at himself. Play harder.
He is.
All right, let's take a look at the game, Jimmy. How do you analyze this one?
Pressure. This is the whole thing. $70,000 is up there to the winner, okay? Consequently, the Dallas Cowboys are a little bit richer, and they may take this pressure a little bit better. The pressure's going to be on Starr. No question about it. Both teams will try to establish a running game, and I think one thing will happen. Landry will be the difference in the pressure.
And the Cowboys will come through in the end, you think?
In a high-scoring game, though.
Is this Cowboy team as good as Landry's recent ball clubs?
No. Danny White is not a Roger Staubach. Let's start with that one right there, and it ends right there.
All right, Jimmy. And the NFL Today continues on CBS in just a moment.
Quarterback, Lynn Dickey's life this season has been a rich and happy feast. Like a kid in a candy store, he has so many goodies to choose from, you can hardly know which one is going to catch his eye. And that's been a real problem for Green Bay's opponents all season.
When you think of the Green Bay Packers, you think of the graceful heroics of James Lofton, the exuberance of the irrepressible John Jefferson, and the gutty determination of tight end Paul Kaufman. Almost unnoticed is Lynn Dickey, an immobile, battered old warhorse, better known for his injuries than his invincible passing. He is the man in command of the Packer offense, and after 12 years in the NFL, he's mellowed a little, but not much.
I don't scream and yell as much as I used to because I can't find my cheek pad helmets when I throw my helmet against the bench and the cheek pads go flying 20 yards away and they say, all right, offense, get in there, you know. So I don't do that as much as I used to, but I think I fit more into that category where if somebody is not doing their job, I think it's my job to jump down his throat, and I'm not out there for a popularity contest.
It wouldn't be much of a contest, because on the end of a Lynn Dickey pass, you'll generally find one of the most flamboyant receivers in the NFL. One of the wackiest guys is number 82, Paul Kaufman, best known at his Kansas high school for failing his tractor driving test. His tidiness and table manners earned him the nickname Hog.
We would just go through the lunch line and pile the food on our trays and just act like a bunch of hogs. And matter of fact, if I could just show you my T-shirt here. As you can see, hog is not just a name, it's a way of life.
In sleek contrast to the hog and his tractor is number 80, James Lofton, more of the Jaguar type.
I always like to think of myself as a subtle elegance, not overstated, not understated, but, you know, pretty contemporary. And I think the type of receiver I am fits into the game very well today, and I think my personality and my lifestyle blend into today's living.
There's a lot of character in those characters, and Lynn Dickey has total confidence in all of them.
I'm the type of guy who doesn't get caught up in the, oh no, here comes the big pass rush. I block those kind of things out of my mind. I know one of my guys is going to get open. These guys are just intelligent people. They know what life's about. They know how to play the game. They got good football savvy.
Dallas-born John Jefferson showed his savvy with 2 scores last week, and he plans a big homecoming today.
Are we going to Dallas? I'm coming home. Cowboys, I'm coming home.
Expect a high-scoring game. Coach Landy says this is going to be a real shootout, but keep an eye on Doug Cosby, the Cowboys tight end. He should see a lot of action today.
There, thank you. The NFL Today continues on CBS in just a moment.
3 years ago, when Roger Staubach retired as the Dallas Cowboy quarterback, the torch was passed to Danny White, who was finally coming into his inheritance, and in more ways than one. Like other Cowboy quarterbacks, Danny's discovered the payoff on the field can lead to big paydays in other areas. In Dallas, the sports hero in the 60s was an irreverent Don Meredith.
It was really a screwed-up looking thing. I didn't even know what to... Yeah, I think they did. I think they missed it, because I didn't know what to audible.
In the 70s, Roger Staubach thrilled Cowboy fans.
Staubach going deep for Tony Hill, who's all alone. Caught, touchdown.
Going down, baby. We are going to the Super Bowl. We can beat anything coming our way.
And now, in the 80s, Danny White is on his way to attaining the same level of success as Meredith and Staubach.
It's true that as a Dallas Cowboy quarterback, I have a tremendous heritage to live up to, but not because of what Roger did. I want to someday be able to walk up to him and say, I'm a better quarterback than you ever were, Rog. And I've got a long ways to go, but I'm working on it.
Dallas, Texas. It's a city where people do things with style. Thank you. Have lots of power and tons of money. And if you play your cards right, being quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys can provide you with all these opportunities. And like the quarterbacks who preceded him, Danny White appears to have the right stuff.
Hey, you drinking Lipton tea?
Wouldn't drink nothing else.
Me neither. Lipton's
The
got
right
that special
stuff from his
quality
cowboy
blend
years
in it.
helped Meredith in gaining recognition as a commercial spokesman and broadcaster.
Rolaids really does spell relief.
The right stuff has helped Staubach pose burning questions.
How do you spell relief? I spell relief.
And already, the Cowboy quarterback mystique is paying off in numerous endorsements for Danny White.
Well, you know, Danny's is what I would call an entrepreneur. There's a difference between an entrepreneur and a capitalist. And you know that an entrepreneur is a person who doesn't have any money, he thinks he does, and a capitalist does. I would call Danny White a capitalist.
Isn't there a certain power that goes along with being a Dallas Cowboy? You all are so successful and popular, and that works to your advantage.
Well, as the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, you have a lot of opportunities, business-wise. And probably the most important thing I've learned is that nothing in this life is free.
On occasion, Danny gets deeply involved in his interest in a boat company and in oil exploration. He succeeded in earning almost as much off the field as on it.
Bottom line is, as long as you produce, things are going to be okay. And that's why my priorities are such that I go out and I play football and I do the very best that I can. I'm not going to get rich overnight, but I don't need to get rich overnight. I'm very happy the way things are going financially right now.
This year, White's performance has earned him a Pro Bowl selection. But although his financial future is secure, an unfulfilled ambition spurs him on.
The quarterback has got to be a take-charge type of player. And through being successful, I think I've come to realize that by golly, I'm a pretty good quarterback, and I've got the ability to take this team to the Super Bowl.
Brent, some say as a quarterback that Danny lacks the, excuse me, the charisma of a Staubach or a Meredith, but there's no question that his intensity and his desire is there to win that Super Bowl ring, especially this year more than any other year.
The NFL Today will continue on CBS in just a moment. Before we go to the game, a couple of honors for Phyllis and Jimmy. They don't know I'm going to mention this, but I know that Jimmy tomorrow night is going to be honored here in New York City by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And Jimmy, congratulations. I know all the time you have spent with that group. And Phyllis, of course, you are to go to New York here soon. And a late dear friend of mine, Jack Quinlan, he was a great baseball broadcaster, and they have an honor in his name, and of course you have won it for your work last year. Congratulations. You're going to Chicago February 11th, I believe.
Hope you can both be there.
Nice going, you two. And if we have a great game today, that'll wrap up a tremendous afternoon and a marvelous weekend.
It'll be a great game.
Okay. Coming up next, it'll be the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. I'm Brent Musburger. At halftime, we will take a look at the New York Jets and, of course, their victory out in Los Angeles over the Raiders. And we will also take a look at how the Miami Dolphins have advanced to the AFC Championship by eliminating the San Diego Chargers. And that game wound up just a short time ago. But now sit back because you'll gaze upon Texas Stadium, where along about now the players are being introduced and they are trotting out onto the field. And it is just about kickoff time in Big D. So long, everybody. All right, Pat and John, coming up at halftime, we're going to show you how the Dolphins and the Jets got to the AFC Championship game, and Jimmy the Greek will give us the favorite for that showdown in Miami next week. And we'll get started here on CBS in just a moment. I think all of us hyped a rematch that simply did not live up to its expectations earlier today. The Miami Dolphin defense climbed all over Dan Fouts and the San Diego Chargers, winning easily in the Orange Bowl. Now, the first 5 times the Dolphins handled the ball, they either scored a touchdown or kicked a field goal. Here was their first score. Woodley rolled right, and Nett Moore had 6. And Don Coryell knew his defense was in deep trouble. Woodley here will throw over the middle to Ronnie Lee. And it was 21-0. And Don Shula was extremely pleased. Now, Fouts will come back. Here he goes to Charlie Joyner. 28-yard Charger touchdown. The extra point fails, and it's 24-6, 27-13 at the half, and this the key interception. Fouts was within 2 touchdowns when Glenn Blackwood got one of his pair of interceptions. Then trailing 34-13, Fouts will again be intercepted by Blackwood, killing San Diego's last scoring threat. 5 interceptions for Don Shula and the Miami Dolphins.
We've been playing big defense all year long, and it continues to get better. And today was one of the examples of our defense and what its capabilities are. You go against the #1 offense and Fouts and Winslow and Chandler and everybody else, Muncie, and the defense holds them to 2 touchdowns. And it was just an outstanding performance. You're not supposed to sack Fouts, and we sacked them. You're not supposed to intercept Fouts, and we got some big interceptions, some big turnovers.
A lot of it was due to the pass rush that we got today, for one, and secondly, because we did such a good job getting jams on people.
And when a team plays a deep zone like San Diego does, you have to have just a little bit extra time to be able to read it and find the open receiver. So I'd say that the offensive line play today was probably the difference.
And as a result of the victory earlier today, the Dolphins now will host the New York Jets, who yesterday went out to Los Angeles and rallied in the 4th to beat the Raiders. And Richard Todd said it was Wesley Walker's speed that did it.
You know, is an all-pro, and you know, we're going to use him. We threw deep quite a bit because they play a lot of zero coverage, a lot of man coverage, and you know, I challenge anybody to get up there and do that to Wesley.
The Raiders, though, came back. They dominated the 3rd quarter. They scored the first 2 times they handled the ball. Here is Malcolm Barnwell getting loose. And suddenly, the Raiders were ahead 14-10. But then Richard Todd sent the burner deep, and that set up the winning touchdown.
The key was that our defense really sucked it up there at the end. We fumbled. We had a 1st down, and I said, "Oh my God, we let them back in the ball game."
But twice in the closing minutes, Jim Plunkett and the Raiders had a chance to pull it out. But twice, Lance Mel dropped back into that zone and intercepted for the Jets. And they advanced to the AFC Championship 17-14. There's the happiest man of all, Walt Michaels, the head coach of the Jets. And what made yesterday's victory especially sweet for Walt was that it came over his #1 enemy in the league, Al Davis, who fired him 20 years ago. Here's what happened at halftime yesterday. A phone call from Michaels came into the Jets locker room. Michaels was told the caller was the Jets chairman, Leon Hess. When Walt picked up the telephone, the caller, whoever it was, and it was not Hess, said some abusive things about New York Star defensive end Mark Gastineau. Michaels immediately suspected that Davis was behind the stunt. He hollered into the telephone, "Al Davis, I'll choke you." It later turned out that the real culprit was a man who identified himself as the part owner of a bar in Queens. When Davis was told about Michaels' initial reaction to the telephone call, he described the Jet coach as an insecure idiot. Now, Michaels has had a news conference here earlier today, and he said he will have no more comment. But, of course, Walt is not the only one who has accused Davis of dirty tricks over the years. Some coaches have even charged him with bugging locker rooms. My favorite story in that regard is Harlan Savari. Savari was the coach of the Chargers. Al was on the sideline for the Raiders. Al had him down by a couple of touchdowns at the half. Harlan was changing the whole offensive scheme of things at halftime. And it suddenly dawned on him what might be happening. He looked up at a light bulb in the locker room. And he said, "And damn you, Al Davis, wherever you are listening." So Michaels is not the first. When we come back, Jimmy the Greek will tell us who's favored, Jets and the Dolphins, and we'll do that right after these messages from your local station.
Right. Details at the store and get $100, right? Okay, I'll tell them. $100.
Get a $100 rebate on the home computer from Texas Instruments.
This is $100 for the people, right? Now, you're not fooling.
Channel 4, KDFW TV, Dallas-Fort Worth.
Jimmy, down in the Orange Bowl. Next Sunday, it's the Dolphins and the Jets. Who will be favored?
Start tossing a coin. Miami will probably be the slightest of slightest favorites, only because they're at home. That means under a field goal.
They blew them out the first time they played. The Dolphins won that first match easily.
I know, but what was it the second game? A toss-up of almost a tie, 21-20, and that's just what it'll be this time.
All right. Jimmy, let's show everybody some highlights now from the Washington Redskins' victory yesterday over the Minnesota Vikings. Again, it was a sellout crowd in RFK Stadium. They will host the NFC Championship game next Saturday. Oh, that's the signal for John Riggins off tackle right there.
That's great.
And here came Big Riggins. He carried it 37 times for 185 yards and 1 touchdown. But Bud Grant and the Vikings simply do not quit. And they came right back and closed to within 7 at 14-7 as Ted Brown just got to the outside on the left and dashed on in from the 18. But then Joe Theismann, who certainly has been the quarterback of the year in the NFC, went to the hero in the Lions game, Alvin Garrett, and suddenly it was 21-7, but it would have been a lot closer, except that this pass from Tommy Kramer to Sammy White was inexplicably dropped in the end zone. Riggins take a bow for the great job, and then Irv Cross checked in with Joe Theismann after the game.
The men up front make holes, they create creases, and then all of a sudden John will take one, it looks like there's nothing there, and he's gone 40 yards like he did towards the end of the football game. It seems like he's like a diesel. He just gets more and more and more momentum as the game goes on.
And, of course, at halftime, it is 20-7 down in Dallas, and the winner goes into Washington to play the Redskins. Irv Cross is on the sidelines down there in Dallas, and so let's go down to Irv. Irv?
You know, Brent, a couple of observations very quickly. When we were down here on the sideline during the pregame warm-up, we stood right next to the Cowboy team, and not one player said a word when they were going through their individual drills. Of course, concentration levels are very important in the playoff game, but it seemed kind of strange, like maybe they might have been flat. But I'm sure Dennis Thurman's interceptions, of course, sparked them. The other thing, which is very obvious to me, is that the Green Bay Packers wanted at least 2.8 seconds in their passing attack to deliver the ball. We've recorded all the passes so far. We've only recorded one time when Dickey had 2.8 seconds to throw. So the Cowboy pass rush is doing its job. Let's go up to Pat and John.
Okay, Irv, thank you very much. There are two things that stand out in my mind, John. One is the thing that Green Bay dreaded most, and that was facing that 6 defensive back defense that Dallas uses, and also the ever-present turnover situation.
Well, that's the thing. You know, it looks like to me, you know, that Dallas is just a playoff machine, that they have so much confidence. They're playing strong on offense and defense and special teams. And Green Bay is playing good defense, but on offense, they look a little shaky. They look a little unsure of themselves, and they don't look like they're really in sync. And, of course, those 2 interceptions, as you say, just killed them this first half.
What do you think? I can't really see that they need to make any adjustment in their thinking. Their thinking was solid going in, I think.
Well, probably stay away from Dennis Thurman and Everson Walls and maybe go to work on someone else. I think they'll try and sneak Philip Epps in the game a little more, get the 3 wide receiver, maybe put John Jefferson in the backfield and see what type of coverage that draws.
You know, John Madden and I did the first, this is not to count Green Bay out by any means, but John and I did the first Dallas-Washington game. I don't think really anybody, up until perhaps the last couple of weeks, really thought that Washington is as good as they are.
Well, I sure like them. I think that, you know, they've only lost 1 game, and I think that Dallas game, Dallas was better that day. Then I think after that game, I think Washington improved, sneaked up on a lot of people, impressed, and I think Dallas slipped, and they went through their slump. And I think right now Washington is probably playing better than Dallas up until today. Next week will be a great game.
Oh, it should be, really, and of course we'll be there. Right now, though, we've got matters at hand as the Packers and Cowboys just start to come back on the field. And we'll have the second half with Dallas leading 20-7.
Next, the NFC Championship will be Dallas against Washington. There's no need for any incentive because they really don't care for each other. Irv Cross will be around and have some guests down on the sideline from the winning team. While I have a chance, and you look at Danny White and Tom Landry, gives me a chance to say thank you and say so long for John Madden and for myself, Pat Summerall. So that's the final score as we get closer to Super Bowl time. Dallas 37, Green Bay 26. Right now, let's send you to Brent Musburger in New York.
All right, Pat and John, thank you. Dallas, Washington, memories of Clint Longley and George Allen. And Irv Cross will be in that locker room, but I want to remind everybody that coming up next, 60 Minutes. And tonight, it headlines a story that looks at what happened after a New Orleans policeman was killed. That is a story that a federal judge tried to keep off the air, a very important story. That is coming up next, except out on the West Coast. And we will have those interviews with Irv Cross inside the Dallas Cowboys locker room. And also, we'll take you back and show you what has transpired throughout the National Football League on this weekend. And we will continue with the NFL Today in just a moment. playing for the NFC Championship and the right to go back to a Super Bowl. And let's go down now to Irv Cross at Texas Stadium. Irv?
Brent, of course, the happiest man in town, Coach Tom Landry. Coach, I guess they're never easy, are they?
No, they really aren't, Irv. I think that was a great football game, boy. Anybody saw that game enjoyed it, because I never saw so many big plays.
Well, I know prior to the game, you expected a lot of scoring. You know, you have a good defense. The Packers came in with a reasonably good defense. Why did you expect so much ball movement?
Well, I just felt like that both sides could move the ball. We know with their receivers, they had to score, you know, and we felt like we could score too, even though two good defenses were out there. And it was a game where there were a lot of errors, but it was really an exciting ball game.
Jefferson and Lofton on the outside, two great wide receivers. Your plan coming into the game to stop them, Coach?
Yeah, we tried to stop them. We doubled them up a lot in the first half, and then they started getting away on the runs a little bit on us. And then the second half, they came out and did a great job. They changed the tempo of the game. They came in their wide receivers in there, and we didn't adjust quick enough, I didn't think, to our 4-0. Defense, and when we did, then we slowed them down a little bit.
Coach, congratulations on another big win.
Appreciate it.
We got a rookie, #1 draft choice from Kentucky State, Rod Hill, who broke off a kick return for a big play to get your club started. Rod, I guess it's one of the many big plays you expect to make here, eh?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm a #1 draft pick, and that's my job to play football, and I'm glad I got a chance to do it this playoff game.
Do you feel pressure as a #1 draft choice coming to the Dallas Cowboys? Do you expect to step in that lineup and perform right away?
Well, you know, before the draft, I talked to the Cowboys, and I knew what my situation would be once I got here, and that was to learn, you know, take it by, you know, ear. And I did that, and, you know, fortunately, it came down to my turn to play, and I did the job.
Rod, tell me about the big kickoff return.
Well, you know, on the first kickoff, I noticed there was an opening, but I kind of slipped to the left, so I said, I'm going to take this one straight to the right. And that's what I did. I had good blocking, and, you know, fortunately, I got down to the 9-yard line. I think the guy dived and got me, but I helped us out.
All right, congratulations,
Can I say hello to my mother?
Go ahead.
Hello, my grandma.
All right, let's go back to Brent Musburger.
All right, Irv, thank you. You have to be happy for that young man, because a week ago against Tampa Bay, he was burned, taken out of the lineup. His replacement of the nickel, Monty Hunter, ran in that big interception on Doug Williams. We're going to take a look at the weekend, set the stage around the NFL when we continue.